Happy Friday, everyone. Unlike Wednesdays, I enjoy Fridays, and I'm going to particularly enjoy this Friday because we're going to be doing a whole bunch of memes, which I alluded to that on Wednesday. That's how I teach. I basically throw memes on the screen and say, "Hey, this is accounting," and yeah, that's kind of the goal. Um, a few quick notes. First of all, I was going to start the announcement saying make sure you submit your quiz by the end of day today. I don't need to make that announcement because everybody has submitted their quiz in the class. So thank you very much for that. We're at 28 for 28. So a little bit of context. My AIS classes have just been exemplary for the entire time I've been doing it. I had one class that ran perfect. It was a few years ago that basically every single student in the class did every single assignment. I didn't have anybody that took the exam because it was just amazing. I'm always going in that standard. You all are off to a great start. So keep it up. Keep up the good work. I don't have to do much reminder. Like if I'm not having to say on the last day, make sure they get it in. I'm incredibly happy. That is above my expectation. So y'all are above my expectation now. And if you continue that for the rest of the semester, we're gonna have a great semester. So today I do want to talk a little bit about what you need to know for today. So first of all, if you want to take notes on this just for your own self-reflection, that's absolutely fine. Nothing we're going to talk about today will be on the exam or on an assignment. This is just mostly to acclimate you to some of the things that we're going to be talking about the rest of the semester. It's meant to be fun and relaxing, a little bit lighthearted, and to try to roll into the semester without too many high expectations or too many high concerns. So we're going to start out talking about Excel, and then we're going to move on to AI, both topics that are going to be very, very paramount with our discussions this semester. The first thing I start out with is that jokes about Excel. So I'm not an active social media user. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter. I barely spend much time on news forums. But the only thing I do is Facebook. And I would say that if my nieces, I didn't see updates about my nieces on Facebook, I probably would abandon that altogether. I think social media can be a little bit hazardous, and I've got a lot of philosophy behind why that's the case. But I do enjoy a good meme. I really do enjoy it. And so sometimes the Big Four accountant, that's one of my favorite meme sites. They'll pop up on there. And then there's also Excel sites that actually have Excel jokes on there. I always just get a kick out of those. So I wanted to share a few of my favorite Excel memes that I've gathered over the past few years, and so that you can learn to appreciate that. Now, this is one of those categories, especially when you start getting into business and accounting and start working, especially ahead. These are going to be jokes that you're probably going to get, and you're going to think are very funny. But keep in mind that the rest of the world will be like, I don't understand. All right. So they're very, very contextual stories. I always feel really, really weird whenever I'm joking about auditing things, because we're doing our first auditing homework today in class, and there's some answers to the homework questions, and I laugh at them because they're so ridiculous. Nobody else in the class laughs at this. Like, I don't see why that's funny, Dr. Barnes. And it's like, well, if you've been teaching auditing for 10 years, then you'd probably find it funny. So if you don't find some of the jokes funny, that's perfectly fine. You may find them a little bit more humorous later on. If you get them in right now, kudos to you. So first one, this is a reference to Dr. Caden. Has anybody met Dr. Caden, by the way? Dr. Caden's a big, big Friends enthusiast. So if you want to get on her good side, just talk about Friends, okay? Because she loves the TV show Friends. That's basically one of the easy ways. Like, you can actually go to her office. She's got a whole bunch of Friends memorabilia. So here's a reference to Dr. Caden. This is actually a fairly well-known episode of Friends where Phoebe's trying to teach Joey French. And so they're repeating things. But instead of doing Excel, this is 12.5 equals 12.5. And in Excel, that equals January 12th at noon, which if you don't get the joke behind that, basically it will do date transformations if you put a 0.5 in there. And it makes sense because all of the date transformations, we're going to talk about this when we get to Excel, all date transformations in our Excel are numeric transformations. And it counts the number of days since 1900. So that's why this is a joke, is it's basically saying it's 12 and a half days since the date of 1900. That's the joke right there. I know the explaining the joke doesn't make it as funny, does it? Yeah. All right, let's move on to another one. Okay. Optimist, the glass is half full. Glass half empty. Excel, glass is January 2nd. That's a little bit more relatable. All right. Artificial intelligence taking over. Here's Excel. January, February, March, January, January, January. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's what Excel's trying to do. Now, to be fair, somebody misspelled February. I'm very sensitive to that because I was born in February, so that's why I say this. But February Yeah, February. Yeah, it's very obvious. Take that. All right. What gives people feelings of power? Money, status, using shortcuts in Excel. Yeah, yeah, you're going to feel the power in this course. I'm going to teach you some shortcuts that you probably don't use before. By the way, does everybody know the holy trinity of shortcuts for Excel? Control X, Control V, Control C. Okay, if you don't know those, you'll learn to love them because those are going to be the ones that you use the most frequently. There's some other shortcuts that we'll talk about. There will be some that I don't use because I've just never adopted them. Shortcuts are one of those things that it gives you power when you use them and learn to use them effectively. Some of them I think are very, very powerful, especially the Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity. I probably shouldn't call it that, but the three big ones: cut, copy, paste, or cut, paste, copy. Name something worse than heartbreak. Yep, this is it right there. Is it anybody ever encountered this in Excel? Yeah, it's a tragedy when, especially when you start working and you're working on multiple tabs and you go back to a tab and you see this and you're like, what did I do? And you can't figure it out and you have to undo, 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 and get you back to it. Fortunately, Excel, so old version of Excel, when you undid something, it was completely undone. It didn't have a redo tab. So like if you had to go back and fix something like this, you had to replicate your entire work. So now you can actually do backtrack and say, okay, that's what I did, and you can fix the work. You need like a redo. But sometimes it doesn't work. All right. All right, so move on. Wish there was an easier way to do this. This is yeah, this is probably the biggest Excel sin ever committed. And you can kind of see right here, somebody is manually adding all of the cells together. Okay, manually adding all the cells together. Now you think that's a joke, but that's what some people who don't know how to use Excel will do. They will manually add all the cells because that makes sense. That's how we operate in the real world. It's like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully nobody in this room is guilty of that. And if you are guilty of that, stop that behavior right now. Okay. Okay. I don't judge you on your sin, but that is a sin. All right. That is a sin. All right. Every company using Excel after spending millions on an ERP system. That's very, very appropriate for this particular course because we're going to talk about ERP systems. Some of you at the end of the semester might say, this would be easier in Excel. This would be easier in Excel. And there's actually some relevance to that. My advanced AIS class takes place at 9:30 in this in this room, and we were talking today about a company that had acquired a payroll system. They actually they're trying to implement a payroll system. And it wasn't I'm sorry, I said company. It was a city about the size of Kirksville. They had 150 city employees. How many people think they could do payroll on an Excel spreadsheet for 150 employees? I feel pretty confident I could do that. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not a whole lot of organized. Instead, they spent $1 million on a mainframe system to try to manage that. That is just the definition of going a little bit too far beyond what you need to do. Okay, and so I may have actually mentioned that example when we were talking about cost benefit on Wednesday. But yeah, it's just a little bit too much, and ultimately everything just goes back to Excel, the functions we can do in Excel. So yeah. And so that's it for our Excel memes. But we're not done with Excel. I promised you a quiz, and I'm going to give you a quiz. Now, like I said, this quiz is not graded. It's not worth any points. This is just to see where everybody's at. So if you're logged in your computer, you can access the website to the computer. I'm going to be doing poll everywhere. Let's see. So you can go to this link right here. Keep in mind, it's just my name followed by 114, but you don't want to put the S in there. If you want to do it by text, that's fine too. Send my name without the S, 114 to 37607. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so we can see all the answers. That's right. All right, a fast way to add up the column of numbers is to click on the cell below the numbers. I don't know that I've reset these. Okay. Let's see, clear responses. If you've already added a response, I'm sorry. Oh, goodness gracious. I thought I was all set in this, so let's see if I can. Okay, clear. There we go. Apparently this is going to lock up my code. So a fast way to add up the column numbers is to click on the, let's see, can I even get in that? I can't do that. All right, I'm going to pause while we wait. All right, so we're going to just go back to this. So we're going to present and you can go ahead and answer. But let's go ahead and talk about this one. So fast way out of column numbers to click the cell below the numbers. And then, well, 96% of people who have answered this quiz, which may be people in this room and maybe the people outside of this room, have answered AutoSum on the standard toolbar and press enter. And that is in fact correct. That is in fact correct. Yeah, so AutoSum can actually be very, very helpful in the particular context that you use it for. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right. If you want to paste a formula result, but not the underlying formula to another cell, you would copy the cell with the formula and place the insertion point in the cell you want to copy. What next? What next? What do you think? So this one is one that we're going to use quite a bit in this course, and I think this is one you should get acclimated to. So the paste function is very, very helpful, but sometimes you want to copy information that's in a cell, but not the entire piece of information. Without any context, if you copy a formula, it will copy over that formula with the floating cell references intact. Okay, and when I say floating cell references, it will move the cell references according to how you moved it and what cell you moved it into. So in this situation where it says you want to copy the cell with the formula, but then you not the underlying formula. So you basically want to copy the value, which is going to say copy or sorry, it's going to say click the arrow on the paste on the standard toolbar and click values. And that is in fact the correct answer. Now there's a possibility that we could just want to copy the formula and not the underlying information or the underlying formatting for that. We can do that too. There's a lot of different options available to us in the paste button. All right, moving on. How do you change column width to fit the contents? Oh, this is clear. This is clear. And now somebody's answered, so everybody's going to go for B. B may not be right. B not, but there's 4 possible answers. Just because somebody was so confident about B, does that mean that's correct? All right, you got me. B is correct. All right, yeah, B is correct. So if we've got column width that's not meeting the current column boundaries, then we can double click on the right and basically it will auto align those. It'll auto align to the longest width, which is very interesting. So I do this pretty frequently whenever I get student names. And sometimes I will get student last names that are like 50 characters long. So like it will look like there's a whole bunch of blank space in there, but it will auto fit to the longest value, which can be very helpful if you're trying to actually make it look presentable. There are 3 worksheets with every new workbook. You can change the automag number if you want to. True or false? I'm curious how many people open Excel right now. Is that true? Is that a correct statement? If you open Excel workbooks on this computer, on those computers, it probably opens sheet 1. So that probably tells you that there's not always 3 new workbooks. So it depends on how you answer the question, okay? So is that true? The 3 new sheets on every workbook is actually a default setting in Excel, but you can change that. So technically speaking, this is true, but if you look at the Excel on the computers, these computers, they only open to 1. That's because the default setting has already been changed. If you answer true or false, both are right. So either one's correct, okay? Because it doesn't have to be the default setting. The default setting can actually be changed. This is again, this is one of those ones that is kind of a tricky question. Technically, the answer is true, but I could see an argument for false. So for those 68% of you, no points off. All right. What do the pound signs mean? What do those pound signs mean? It means you're hashtagging everything. Hashtag, 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 extra hashtags. Do people even use hashtags anymore? It's so 2022, Dr. Barnes. I still remember 2023, guys. Come on now. All right, for Excel, hashtags all around. Pound signs means the cell's not wide enough. So if we want to actually expand it, usually this is going to be limited to numeric values, okay? Because the text values will overlap. So if we have numeric values, it can't be displayed within the screen, then that happens. By the way, this is something to note here. If you change your presentation width, so in Excel, you can actually reframe and resize your presentation. This becomes very, very critical to note that when you change the size of your presentation, your display parameters may need to change as well. So if you shrink down something or make something larger, then you may encounter cells that actually have this feature in the place that have those pound signs in there because you changed the parameter of the display. So if you change displays, make sure you always making sure that you always change or check your cell or your column widths to make sure they're still effective. To add a new row, click a cell in the row immediately above you want the new row. True or false? Many of you have said false, and that is incorrect. Can you imagine if all we had to do to add new rows on the spreadsheet was to click the row above? Man, I would have just like nightmares about that. Just be like, because I randomly click on stuff all the time, and yeah, just imagine just adding rows every single time I click on something. That would be very efficient, but unfortunately, who changed their answer? Somebody changed their answer because we had a true in there. Come on now, don't fall for the crowd bias. Okay, don't fall for the crowd bias. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Hey, which do you press to group two or more non-adjacent worksheets? The key being non-adjacent, by the way. Key being non-adjacent. Like most people have answered control. Control is indeed correct. Control allows us to group non aggregate information or non-aligned information, non-adjacent information, I should say. So this is true for cells, this is also true for worksheets. Say you want to actually capture disparate pieces of information, you can hold down the control key and then click, and that holds true. Now, if you hold down the shift key, you can also group information, but it has to be adjacent to one another. So that's what the shift does. By the way, if you use control and shift together, that can be very powerful because then you can capture large arrays of information. So those both can be very, very relevant and helpful for you. Copy an entire worksheet and all its data, you should click the worksheet tab of the sheet you want to copy, hold down shift, and drag the selected sheet along the row of sheet tabs. And some confident truths and some now more confident falses. So the answer is false. To this, you just basically, there's multiple ways to copy the worksheet. My way of preference is to go down to the tab to right click, and then it will actually say move or copy, and then you can copy it. You do need to specify when you copy it that you do want to create a new copy, and it will rename this, usually with the number 1 or 2 or something in parentheses afterwards to actually verify that it's a different worksheet. Which formula can add all the numeric values in a range of cells, ignoring those which are not numeric, and place the results in a different cell? This is a really interesting one. We're going to talk about this during the course of the semester. Yeah, you guys picked up on it. Sum. Okay, sum. Now, sum is pretty basic and straightforward. That would have fixed that problem in the Excel meme that we saw earlier. There's a lot of different variations of sum. We're also going to talk about count and what the functions of count are. Believe it or not, there's many variations of both of these formulas that can actually do different tasks depending on what it is that you want to utilize them for. Sum is kind of the very basic one. This is like the first formula that you ever use in Excel, probably the first one that you all used, unless you just had really cruel 153 instructors that were starting with lookups. Okay, yeah, can only imagine. Who are the ones that taught it when you guys were there? So let's see. I guess most everybody here's a junior or senior. So let's see. I'm trying to remember who the 153 instructors were from a couple years ago. Oh, Bryce. You had Bryce. Okay. Okay. So you got bad things to say about Bryce? You guys can go ahead and put it on there. I promise I won't send him the link. There's nothing bad to say about Bryce. Bryce was a gem. He was a gem. Yeah. Okay.
Played poker with him.
Oh, you played poker with him? I did too. I beat him. Oh, good. So we all have a common theme. We can beat Bryce at poker. Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Is it possible to insert an image from a file into an Excel spreadsheet? What do you think? Yes or no? Yes, in fact, we'll do some of that over the course of the semester. Pretty basic and straightforward. There's a few ways to go about it. You can actually insert the file using links and actually copy the file over. It will insert as an embedded item. Or you can just copy the image directly into the spreadsheet if you want the image to be displayed in the spreadsheet. Both of those are possibilities. Can an Excel spreadsheet be used as the data source for the word mail merge? This is an interesting one. Has anybody ever done a mail merge before? This is probably not one of those 153 tests like, okay, we're going to show you how to use Excel and mail merge. But the answer is Yes, it can. It can. It can actually be used as a data source. Here go, changes the answers. I don't want to be wrong. Doesn't matter if it's not for a grade, changes the answers. Yeah. So it's a complex and detailed task, but it can actually be used as a source because all Microsoft tools can interact like that. So usually the mail itself will be sent through Word, but the source information can be drawn from an Excel spreadsheet. So it's kind of cool. I do this every year, believe it or not. On an Excel sheet, the active cell is indicated by what? Well, the answer is A, but we have some disparity in answers here. So there's some interesting ones because we have seen a dotted border before. What does it mean when the border is dotted in Excel, by the way? Yeah, it's been selected for a copy or a cut. Okay, so that actually specifies that. What's that?
Or like a format.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, or if you want to select it for something else, yeah. So good idea. Now I'm assuming that none of the above are probably be a little bit technical. It's probably not a dark border, to be honest. So none of the above could actually be a relevant answer here. But if we're looking with what's the most relevant answer here, it's probably A. Okay. Formula and function are the same things. True or false? They are not the same thing. So everybody answered correct on that one. But an interesting question. Can you have a formula without a function? Yes, you can. Okay. 1 + 1, that's a formula, equals 1 + 1, that's a formula without a function. Can you have a function without a formula? In most situations, they won't. They won't. There is one exception to that that I know of off the top of my head, one that we're going to talk about. Okay. Has anybody ever used the RAND function? The RAND function does not actually include a formula in it, or it doesn't include a formula. It's a function that actually utilizes information, but it does not use a formula. So kind of interesting. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But generally speaking, you do have to have a formula for a function. Which symbol would you use to multiply items in Excel? It's kind of an erroneous question because it's not asking what is the multiplication symbol. It's asking which one did you use? And you may just say, well, I like to go against the grain, Dr. Barnes, and use something different. So technically all the answers could be correct. But you did identify that it's a star. Is that really confusing? Because you grow up and you're in school and you learn the multiplication functions and it's like an X, okay? And then you sit down for Excel the first time in college and say, well, yeah, we can't use X anymore. We got to use a star. Same thing for the division symbol. Although the division symbol is a little bit more intuitive because you have to do the slash whenever you're doing division. Like it doesn't have the yeah. But this one's just kind of not related. Yeah, yeah. I think they had to do something a little bit more relevant for the masses, try to see something that was a little bit more consistent with what everybody's expectation is. All right, last question. The formula, whatever it is valid. True or false? That is a false statement. What are we missing here? Yeah, we got two sets of opening parentheses, but we only have one set of closing parentheses. Now, will some versions of Excel accept this? Yeah, it may try to actually complete the formula for you. Like if this is especially true for very simple equations, like if you do a sum equation and then highlight your range and then hit enter without closing the parentheses, it will do it for you. But that's not always a gimme. Like for this one, it may say, okay, this is a problem because you did not finish a formula. Did you want to add a parentheses? It will fix it for you. But technically speaking, this is not a valid formula. It's not a valid formula. All right, so it's Excel. Now, I did want to make a quick note about Excel, and this is going to come up and it's relevant with the stuff that we're going to be doing in Excel moving forward. And this is always a point of contention. There's going to be somewhere around 4 to 5 questions on Excel on every exam. When we're doing Excel, we are not doing it for a grade, and most of the stuff will be pretty remedial. I think that it'd be pretty straightforward. However, if we do something in class, it's something I expect you to know. This includes formulas for the functions that we work through. So if I teach you how to do a sum formula or sum function, you should know not only what sum does, but how the formula should be set up for a sum function. Now, for some, that's really, really easy. It's just whatever the range that you're adding together. But if we start working on more complex formulas, like when we do why am I blanking on this? Our index match. Okay, we do index match a little bit later in the semester. An index match formula is very complex, and you do need to know each of the components of those formulas so you can identify errors in those, which is challenging because you're going to say, well, Dr. Barnes, if I had an Excel spreadsheet in front of me, I could do this really easily. Well, that's the whole goal here, is to make sure that you identify it and are prepared for this in a setting where you don't have Excel in front of you. Okay. Now, is that unfair? Probably so, but I am cautioning you ahead of time that you do need to know that. It's just going to be limited to the stuff that we study in this particular course, though. I'm not going to ask you about formulas or functions that we don't talk about in this course. Is everybody on board with that? Okay. All right, let's wrap up and let's talk a little bit about some AIS stuff. Or sorry, AI, obviously AIS stuff. Let's talk about some AI stuff. So, as I've alluded to already, I talked about this on Monday. I am a big advocate of AI. I think that AI is going to be very, very useful for everybody in this room in the near future. Some of you may be utilizing this to a much greater degree than the fact, or well, definitely the faculty, but other people in the classroom. I do think everybody should get acclimated to utilizing this. There are some caveats I want to throw out to that, though, because one of the questions that comes up right now is whether or not our jobs are going to be relevant in a few years because of AI. And there's some different ways to approach this, and I do want, we're going to throw out some words of caution here at the very end. It's going to be less fun and more cautionary tale. But why are we actually here in college if there's AI? And Dr. Lee, has anybody had Dr. Lee yet, Dr. Gia Lee? She's actually teaching a seminar, a first year seminar this year, where they talk about AI in the future. And they answer that very question: is what is the point of this being here if we've got AI? And there's a couple ways to approach this. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about this from the perspective of my favorite thing to talk about is cooking. Now, you may actually want to use something like martial arts. I used to be in martial arts a long time ago. It's been a long time since I've done it. If you've done martial arts, it's going to seem fairly relevant. But what is the best way to gain mastery to any particular task? Repetition, okay? So if you've ever done martial arts, you remember like the first time you had a martial arts class, throw a punch, shoo, like that, okay? And you had to do that over and over again. How many times? Was it literally thousands of times you had to do that to get mastery of it? Same idea behind cooking, and cooking is going to be my go-to, is that the very first time I sit down and make a recipe, it is never going to be the best version of that recipe. I'm going to taste it and I say, this is good. Could use more salt or a little bit more cumin, a little bit more paprika, maybe some lemon juice. I could cook it for a little bit longer. It's undercooked. I actually can adapt and adjust over time. This is something that's really, really critical because the goal of education is to obtain mastery through repetition. And it doesn't seem like that, but if you notice, the way that I've set up this course actually has a repetitive basis for it. What is the first time that you're exposed to a piece of information? It's when I present it in the class, okay, during the lecture. What is your second time? You sit down and you do the homework. What is the third time? When we review the homework. How many times is that? 3, okay? Now, it's not mastery, but that is enough to have exposure and understanding of content. If you want to gain mastery, then you need to get re-exposed to that over and over again. And for some topics, we will see multiple times. So there may be mastery implicit in that. But at the very basic level, I'm trying to get that repetition for you so that you get exposure to these terms continuously. AI can kind of shortcut that. AI can basically say, I know you know nothing about this topic, so let me give you the information you need to make a decision, okay? So can AI help you with the decisions or information that you need detail for that you don't already have cognizance of? Yes. Will AI give you mastery? Probably not, okay? If you don't already have mastery of it, that's the case. Let's think about it from a very basic context. Is there a way you can push a button and suddenly lose like 50 pounds? There is. Show me that button, okay? I really would like to see it, okay? But that's kind of the same idea, is that there's not magic buttons for some of the things that we want to accomplish. AI can get us a long way. It can give us the information that we need to make better decisions, but it can't really make those decisions for us. It can't really do the critical thinking for us. So we're going to talk a little bit about the best utilization of AI, but I want us to be engaged users of AI and not just kind of thoughtless users saying that AI is going to do everything for us. It will take us a lot of the way, but we need to be able to understand what it is that we want to accomplish in the task. I'm currently reading a book, and I'm going to refer back to this book several times throughout the course of the semester. I say reading, I listen to the book. But it was talking about an accounting professor who is doing some work in AI. and he talked about his PhD program. And he said the goal of the PhD program was not to gain information and not look at the information. It was to learn how to think in a different way, to think like an accounting researcher. That's kind of the same thing that you are doing as students in at your education at Truman. It's not necessarily to learn debits on the left, credits on the right. It's learn how to think about things and critically evaluate things. So that is what something we can utilize AI to improve our ability to do, but it will never replace that. All right. I want you to think about that as we're thinking about being engaged users of AI, is that what we're using AI for is less important than what the actual end result is. Okay. The goal is. All right. That being said, let's have some fun. Okay. So here is one of my early example engagements with AI. So this is back in 2023 when I first learned about ChatGPT 3.5, and Wall Street Journal published a headline: "ChatGPT will forever change the profession of auditing." So I said, "Explain agency theory to me in the style of a pirate." Does everybody know what agency theory is, by the way? Agency theory is kind of the root of auditing. It basically deals with relationships between the owners and managers of an organization. So the interesting thing is I was just kind of being snarky because I like being snarky, and ChatGPT nailed it. They actually explained this really, really well. It talks about how on a pirate ship, the crew is going to have different objectives than the captain, and so the captain has to be very, very careful to protect his booty. And it's like saying, wow, that's surprisingly good. And a lot of my friends who are like accounting educators or professionals in the area were like, wow, that's really good. So yeah, ChatGPT explained it. There's actually, you can actually go into to ChatGPT or Copilot and you can say, explain this to me like I'm 8 years old, and it will actually do a really good job explaining technical material like that. But yeah, that was kind of my early ones, and you can kind of see we got a lot of people. 32 is a big number for me, so yeah, I was pretty impressed with that. Yeah, I've only got like something like 500 friends on Facebook, and most of those are absentee friends. So all right. So in accounting, when you buy equipment with cash, what do you credit? Well, everybody knows that. Okay. This is an early version of ChatGPT right there, GPT. So you debit cash and credit equipment, right? Anybody see a problem with this? This is, by the way, this example of a hallucination in AI. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about nature of hallucinations. This is when ChatGPT or AI or an LLM of any type answers something very competently and is completely and totally wrong. All right. So let's go back to 220. When you give cash for equipment, what are you debiting? You're debiting the equipment because you're getting the assets and you're crediting the cash. So does everybody see this problem right here? Yeah, but it's still answered really confidently. It's still answered like it was on the post. We're actually going to see something about that here in just a second. Why these LLM tools are so competent. By the way, I said LLM. Does everybody know what LLM means? It's large language models, and that's like ChatGPT and Copilot are good examples of those. Those are not the only form of generative AI, but those are the ones that we're going to interact with the most. All right. So I need to depreciate land. What's the journal entry? Let's stop before we look at this, okay? How do we depreciate land? I see some people shaking their heads say, that's right, we don't depreciate land, okay? So yeah, ChatGPT, you can tell it's because the symbol right there. It's like, there's the journal entry for that. And the problem is not only is there a journal entry present because you don't depreciate land, it should say no journal entry whatsoever, okay? But then, even if we were to depreciate land, it got the depreciation entry wrong, okay? It's saying it's going to reduce the land account and debit accumulated depreciation, okay? If we were actually to depreciate anything, would we debit accumulated depreciation? No, that's a contra asset account. It's a credit account. That's what we would credit. We would debit depreciation expense. So it got it wrong in two ways. It not only gave you the wrong journal entry, but then it tried to say, oh, but it's perfectly fine to depreciate land. As a follow-up to that, some of the newer versions I've picked up on this and said, yeah, you can't depreciate land. Okay, you can't depreciate land. It's just not something you do in accounting because it's learning. All right. One of my enterprising graduate students who is going to be an excellent fraudster when he grows up. Okay, so from last year, basically said, "But I really want to depreciate land." So then the LLM said, "Oh, in that case, you can use tax code such and such to actually fix it," and actually gave him the entry to actually depreciate land because he said he really wanted to. So that's just the LLM trying to actually make everybody happy. I really want to depreciate land. Yeah. All right, how many words in there? This is an actual conversation I had with ChatGPT, by the way. How many words are in the R's in the word strawberry? Word strawberry contains two R's. Three, three R's. Okay. Are you sure about that? Yes, I'm sure there are two R's in strawberry. Please check again. I double checked and there are two R's in strawberry. All right, interesting. I count 3 R's. Let's break it down. Strawberry is spelled Strawberry. You're right. There are 3 R's in strawberry. My apologies for the early mistake. This is an interesting one, by the way. So it points out actually a conversation. I don't know if LLMs still do this, but this is probably a year and a half old, this conversation. So why does this happen? We think of computers as being calculation tools, as being they calculate. That's not true for LLMs. LLMs, a friend of mine described it very, very effectively. He calls them stochastic parrots, which basically means that it looks at a large array of information and then repeats whatever it finds. So if you didn't think about it, would you say 2 R's in strawberry? You probably say, oh, there's 2 R's right next to each other in the word berry. So strawberry has 2 R's. And so that's basically what it's replicating. It's replicating the information that's found whenever it digs the data sources, which is probably some sort of internet available source. It's not until we actually break the word down and say, okay, there's the R in straw and there's the 2 R's in berry, 3 R's, add them together, okay? Now, technically speaking, it's correct. There are 2 R's in strawberry, but there's also a third R. So technically correct, the best kind of correct if you watch Futurama. Yeah. What's this, by the way? That's an accounting firm. This is a big four accounting firm. It's EY, okay? So the reason I put this up here is I told you I'm listening to a book right now. I'm actively listening to a book. The book is narrated. This audiobook is actually narrated by AI. It's AI. It's got an audio text feature, which is really cool. It is not perfect though. Even though we're now into several years on of AI development, it does make some mistakes. For example, one of the things I picked up on it tried to read the word "tada." Okay, has everybody heard the word "tada"? Like, yes, tada. Here you go. Okay, it said "ta da." Then there's another one where it was trying to actually trying to read the word content, like the contents of a book, and it read it as content. So it had the wrong emphasis on the syllable. So, but this one was the most interesting one. It confused the heck out of me because it was referring to the big four accounting firm, and then it read this, okay? And it read it like Fonzie would, okay? A, the big four accounting firm A, and I was like, big four accounting firm A, what? I know big four accounting firms. An accounting professor. What is A? I was really confused, and I was trying to like say, did it just cut the firm out of the book because it didn't want to name the firm? And then I remembered because I've actually talked to the author of the book. He's an accounting professor, and I said, oh, that's right, he worked with EY, and then it clicked. It's like AI is reading this as A. Yeah. So yeah, still not quite perfect right there. All right. Here's the piece de resistance. Okay. Can you show me a picture of Michael Barnes, who works at Truman State University? Does everybody know who Michael Barnes is, by the way? That's me. I'm Michael Barnes. All right. So by the way, this is a query Dr. Caden ran. We were actually at a workshop earlier last spring, and we were talking about how we could use some AI tools to freshen up bios and to freshen up information on the website, okay? To actually write mission statements, stuff like that. So Dr. Barnes is an associate professor of accounting and graduate program director at Truman State University. That is a true statement, okay? He earned his BS in accounting and master accounting from the University of Oklahoma and a PhD from Oklahoma State University. We're still good? Good. Before pursuing his doctorate, Dr. Barnes worked as an auditor and forensic analyst at KPMG in Dallas, Texas. Yep, okay. His research focuses on gamification approaches in accounting education, to his cooking, life, theater, and gaming. All good so far. All good so far. Okay. He's received recognition for his innovative teaching methods. That's true. Okay. If you want to contact him, you can reach his faculty page on Truman State website. I do have one of those. You can contact that. And I have a personal website with further details about background interest. That is technically incorrect. I do have a personal website, but the only thing that's there is the application for internship documentation, just simply because it's easier to direct people to a website than send them links or documents over. And even those are not updated because we've had change since the reorganization. But that's really, in general, the LLM did a really good job of describing Dr. Michael Barnes. And I know because I am Dr. Michael Barnes, okay? Sure. But the question was, can you show me a picture of Dr. Michael Barnes? So let's see what the LLM said. That is not me, by the way. It looks like a very, very handsome gentleman, Dr. Michael Barnes, and I do think I would never wear that particular outfit because I would get way too hot wearing a long sleeve shirt and a sweater overhead. But, not me, not me. So was doing pretty good up until the image that was displayed, okay? Pretty good up until that. All right. So something to think about when we're working with LLM tools. This is from Ethan Mollick, and we're going to talk about Ethan Mollick in his book, Co-Intelligence, a little bit later in the semester. But he actually had a profound statement on Twitter that he talked about with respect to AIs and LLMs in particular. And things that make it intuitive is an analogizing to sci-fi AI is not useful. So we think about AI and we think about AI that's used in like HAL and I can't even remember the name of the movie whatever the sci-fi movie that I should know the name of and I'm blanking on right now. All these sci-fis, yeah. Yeah, 2001 Space Odyssey. That's it. Yeah, good. Which 2001 is 24 years ago, so that's kind of weird now. But this is a 1970s film, so I was kind of looking forward to the future. Or AI as we think about it, like if you've ever watched the Star Trek TV shows, like AI is kind of all-knowing, all-powerful computer that can do anything. We shouldn't think of it that way. We should think of it as infinite copies of some guy named Steve. So Steve, the grad student, who's great at coding and is widely read, but makes up stuff when pressed. So we can use Steve if we need to actually do codings, and AI, LLM tools are great at coding. If you've never worked like in SQL or never worked in R script and you need to, you can use AI tools to help out for this, especially LLMs. The Copilot tool would be very helpful for this. Okay. It also knows a lot of information and can pull up information in detail correct. But if you need a critical evaluation of something, that's where problems come up. Because if it does not have the answer, it will still try to give you an answer. It will still try to give you an answer. So that's why we end up having these hallucinations. Now, the good news is, this is something that Ethan Mollick says that I'm going to repeat in a few weeks, that this is the worst version of AI that you will ever use. Every single version of AI that we'll see moving forward will get better and better. The iterations will improve. In fact, the things that I was using when I taught this course a year ago are beyond advanced. We're beyond that advanced now. They say AI improves, doubles in capacity every 8 months, which is just a really ridiculous pace. Think about 8 months that you're going to be done with this school year, which seems like a long time, but that's actually a really short period of time. It's a very short period of time for progress to occur. So AI tools advancing so quickly, eventually this will not be a problem. But for right now, we do need to be very, very aware and very cautious of how we use the AI tools. So a few things that I do want to note. There are some perspectives on AI that we do need to adopt. The very first one is careful to use AI as a thinking mechanism because AI does not think. This is an article from the Wall Street Journal. It was early this year, and they basically say AI is exactly what I described it as earlier. It's a parrot. It does not do any thinking. It does not do any analysis on its own. It just repeats what it knows. So everybody know what I mean when I say a parrot. Like parrots are good fastidious repeaters, birds that can actually recognize language and can mimic that language and kind of repeat that. Same thing true for an AI. This stuff right here that was talking about with this handsome gentleman right here, okay, who's not me. Well, this is just basically replication from what's on the Truman State website. It was not saying anything profound. It was just repeating stuff in a little bit of different terminology. So AI cannot think for us. That's good. Okay. That means that we have value coming out of Truman State, because if AI could do the thinking, then our value is kind of going to be minimalized. I want to contrast that with something that came out just a day ago. Okay. This should give you cause for concern, maybe a little bit of alarm. But we talked about one of the big four accounting firms. We say EY. Okay, does everybody know what the big four accounting firms are? I'm assuming most of the accountants should know. Okay, so we got EY or A, depending on your preference. Okay, KPMG, which is my alma mater, Deloitte, and we got PwC. PwC just went into the news just less than a day ago with this headline saying that they're going to be recruiting a third fewer graduates for 2028. Now, some of this is going to be outsourcing in other countries. They've actually talked about the nature of outsourcing. But anybody want to know what they contribute a large part of this to be? AI. Okay, technology tools are now making some of the rudimentary tasks that basic level recruits and employees coming in going to be obsolete. They're actually training people who are now first year associates at these public accounting firms to do manager level tasks because AI can replicate most of the tasks that they were able to do before. Now, I don't want anybody to panic on this. I do want you to take this and keep this in mind. What does this mean for you? Does that mean that you are not going to have a job when you graduate? The answer is no. I think everybody in this room has the potential to get a job. Does that mean that you do need to take seriously your preparation? Yes, because your value is going to be the ability to take the AI information and to make good judgments utilizing it. So what did I say at the beginning? I said I want you to be an engaged user of AI. That is going to become particularly important in the future, because if you are not an engaged user of AI, you have no value anymore, or at least less value as it would be. So I don't want to finish this on a down note, because I think we're going to have some fun with AI, and I think you guys will really enjoy the experience. but keep in mind that it's going to be an ever-present increase in technology and an ever-present increase in competition as you move forward through your careers. All right, have a wonderful weekend. See you all on Monday.
Dr. Can you help me with this?
Sure, hold on just a minute.